This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today I have got a rare treat for all of you. I will be talking to one of the last surviving cast members of Mel Brooks's horror comedy beloved classic, Young Frankenstein. I will be talking to Randolph Dobbs. He played Villager Joe in the movie, and he's one of the townspeople, you know, with the torches and everything. And I'm going to have him on the show today. I was so lucky to find him earlier this year, and we're going to talk today. He became friends with Gene Wilder and worked with him again on The World's Greatest Lover, celebrating its 45th anniversary. He will be my, I think, fifth guest from the movie. I've talked to about 5 people from The World's Greatest Lover. He also worked with Gene Wilder again in Sunday Lovers, and then he got out of the business and became a journalist, and he's active in he's an activist in politics too, as well, it seems. And I'm going to ask him about all that stuff, and it's going to be a great conversation. Halloween October, I waited so long for it, and it's going great so far, and I am so blessed. So yeah, here is my interview with Randolph Dobbs.
Hello.
Hey Randolph, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Oh, very good. Thank you so much.
Awesome. It's such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Absolutely, anytime.
So going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on in your childhood?
I did. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I majored in. And I was fortunate that I started working when I was really young, and one thing led to the next, and tours and off Broadway and ACT in San Francisco, and then started working in films, and and then I was really pleased to be in something big like Young Frankenstein, which really kind of was the very successful comedy film of its day.
Yeah. What age did you officially start gravitating?
I would say when I was in junior high. I tried out for all the plays, and in junior high school and high school and college, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. I mean, my career path has taken some changes, and I went from acting, and then in the 80s I went into business, retail business, and then in the 90s I started working for the Baha'i Faith, and that's what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm. So you're born and raised in Oakland?
I was born in Oakland, but I was raised in the Central Coast area. First in Pismo Beach, then in Salinas, near Monterey, California.
Oh, nice. Because I'm born and raised in San Mateo, and it always lights me up whenever I find out that someone's from the Bay Area. So.
Yeah.
So after
I did live in the Bay Area, especially around the time when I was taking part in things at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco under Bill Ball, and those were great times, and I was learning a lot, and really, really pleasant.
Oh, were you there the same time as Donovan Scott?
What's the name?
Donovan Scott.
Donovan Scott. I don't know. I don't recognize the name.
Or Lois Foraker.
I recognize a woman named Lois, but I didn't know her last name.
Yeah, she was a heavy-set woman. She played Hot Mary in Dirty Harry.
I don't recall. There were a lot of people there.
Okay, because they're both friends of mine, and I've interviewed them as well. Yeah, so you did a lot of theater at the American Conservatory?
Not a lot. I was studying there. I was 19, and I got cast into a play that went on tour and wound up off Broadway about a year later. And that was a very successful venture. You know, it led to television things and, of course, touring. You know, at a young age. You know, got to see the country. So, very, very nice time in my life.
You mentioned before that you were on off Broadway. What did you do off Broadway?
So it was this play called The Cage, which was written by a convict named Rick Clucci. And he formed, when he got out of prison, out of San Quentin actually, when he got out of prison, he formed a theater company called the Barbed Wire Theater. And so this was a prison play called The Cage. And it was, for its day, it was ahead of its time. And just before we opened off-Broadway, there was another play the previous season called Fortune in Men's Eyes. And that was also successful, but The Cage had a very long life. And even after I left the company a year later, they continued to tour in the U.S. and in Europe.
Nice, nice. Did you wish that you had gone with them to Europe?
Well, there was a German film done of the play, and I had an opportunity to do that. They wanted me to do the role. This was after I left the company in New York, but they just weren't willing to. They couldn't come up with the right money, so it was something that I wound up passing on. I wish I had done it. It would have been on film, and that would have been nice, but it just wasn't to be.
And when you're studying acting, do any of your classmates go on to become successful in acting?
I can't recall any of the classmates I had, but when I was starting out, I met a friend of mine, and we were in a few plays, and his name is Ernie Hudson, and he went on to kind of work nonstop since the mid-'70s to the current day. And he's done very well. He's got a great career. And, so, that's someone that I started out with that wound up, kind of breaking the barrier and did quite well during his career.
He's a Ghostbuster.
He was in the Ghostbusters. He was the African-American Ghostbuster.
Yeah. Which I found out he kind of replaced Eddie Murphy in that role.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is
that's something I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is kind of bizarre, I think in hindsight they made a great choice casting him, though, because it probably would have been overkill if they had cast Eddie Murphy in that role.
Maybe. It was a very, very funny film, and I think there were 3 parts to it, right? There was a second part which he was also in, and there might have been a third one. I'm not sure.
There's been a couple reboots, yeah.
Yeah.
So, according to IMDb, you played a construction worker on the Waltons. How was that experience?
It was also very nice. All of my work that I've done, I really appreciated the people I worked with, and usually I was treated with great kindness. And I was young and just starting out, and the scene I was in I think it was season 3, an episode called The Conflict, which was a 2-part program. And the scene I was in was where John Boy comes to, talk to, he's looking for a foreman, and I and another guy were construction workers during a break in our work, and we were in some kind of shed. And it was interesting. It's obviously not a very big role. It was a speaking role. I did have lines, but it wasn't a very big role. It's just that one scene. But it was like one of the first things that I did when I was starting out. I've had big roles in small films and small roles in big films.
Absolutely.
And Young Frankenstein was one where I worked for 2 weeks, and actually the character had a name. It was Tom, but they wound up just referring to it as, what was it, Villager Number 1 or something.
Yeah.
And so anytime you saw, or I'm pretty sure, anytime you saw a scene with villagers in it, I was right up front. And that was also like one of my first films, and Gene Wilder, I had known, and Mel Brooks I met. Mel was, very nice to me, and he tried to help with my career, and just a great guy. And he was. The two of them, he and Gene Wilder, were very different. Mel is always on; he's always cracking jokes. Not always, but most of the time he's funny.
Yeah.
And he's genuinely funny, and just people are having a good time being in his company. Whereas Gene was the polar opposite. He was a contemplative person, quiet, sensitive, very bright. Both of them are very bright. But,
yeah.
Gene looked at things in a really kind of intellectual way, and he was extremely sensitive to other people's feelings.
Yeah.
So he didn't crack jokes. He was funny when he wanted to be, and he had fun in enjoying other people's humor as well. But he was mainly quiet and often just thinking about things.
Right. So was that just a standard audition for you?
I did audition for the role, and but it was through a friend. I knew Gene Wilder was married at the time to a woman named Jo Wilder, great Jo Wilder, and she and my wife were friends, and so that helped me kind of get into the door to see Mel, and I auditioned for him. I memorized a comedy segment from vaudeville, from the London vaudeville era, and I thought I did pretty well. Anyway, I wound up getting the role, and but like I said, Mel was very generous with his time and with his concern. He treated me very well.
Oh, that's good. Were you a huge Mel Brooks fan, and did you like the Universal monster movies?
Well, I didn't. I was a fan of monster films, those old Boris Karloff Universal horror films, which were just great.
Yeah.
And I was pleased that they had a lot of the same people that worked on those films worked on the Young Frankenstein set, like the guy that did all the props for those old black and white monster films from Universal. He was still living, and they got him to bring his gadgets and machines that create electric arcs and funny sounds and things like that. So that's all in the film, and very much like those old black and white horror films. And the makeup man, I can't think of his name at the moment, but he was well recognized. He'd won an Oscar for something, and he was also from the old days and had worked in black and white films because they really wanted that black and white look.
Yeah.
And you may know that in the old days when they did black and white, they filmed the monster in green makeup. And so they did the same thing with excuse me. Even though they shot it in black and white, they needed that kind of texture from green makeup.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, Mel had brought the script to Columbia, and they wanted to make it, but in color. And Mel took it to 20th Century Fox, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Which is
it was a great era, and it wasn't a huge budget film, but it was well financed, They built the set of the castle. The little courtyard outside the front entrance was huge because there was was it a buggy or a car? I guess it was a car that brought the main characters to the castle, and it was a huge set, and it was very real looking. Even when you were up close looking at it, it looked like it was a genuine castle. Then they had the large lobby area, foyer, and then the stairwell, which was two stories tall. It was huge and done extremely well.
It sure was. Kenneth Mars in that titanium arm is just hilarious. He was so brilliant as Inspector Kemp. What do you remember about working with him?
Well, I don't know if it's the same now, but back then there was a real distinction between being an extra and being a actor with lines. Mm-hmm. And since we were with the extras, I'm talking about the Villagers number 1, 2, and 3. We had lines and we were actors, but we were always shown with the background people. So as a result, cast members normally wouldn't really talk to you because it was like a kind of a tiered thing. And then when he found out that we actually were actors, he came up to us and said, "Hey, sorry, I didn't realize, my name is Kenny, and Ken, whatever he said." And so that we were friendly from then on. But up until that point, we were treated kind of, like you were second class.
Yeah. Were you there during the putting on the Ritz scene?
I came to watch that, and that was really funny. And that was at I forget the name of the theater, but I think it was on Santa Monica Boulevard, or maybe Wilshire, in Santa Monica. And so it was an actual theater where they did live programs. And Mel was so nice to me that he would, he said I could come whenever I wanted. And so even though I wasn't in that scene, I came to watch. And most of it was shot at 20th, but they also did some outdoor scenes of the village in the back lot of MGM. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I had my big scene and Kill the Monster and a close-up that was done at the back lot of MGM.
Yeah, and you know what I never realized before is that that scene put on the Ritz, it's kind of a parody of King Kong, putting King Kong on display for the world to see.
Yeah, I didn't realize that at the time. I mean, it was much later that kind of came out. But that's true. That is a parallel where, you have this kind of scientific curiosity, made into a form of entertainment.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how he was able to homage, all those movies from his childhood.
Yeah, when they were working on that, the dance segment, Gene wanted a film choreographer named Hermes Pan.
Oh yeah.
He had done a lot of work with Fred Astaire and
right
back in the day when they did all those big musicals, and he wanted him. So he actually helped with that scene, and Gene was very pleased that he had someone, like from the kind of classic musical era come and work with him on that.
Yeah, this was the second movie in a row where Madeline Kahn is a horrid fiance who ends up with another man. And What's Up, Doc? She goes from Ryan O'Neal to Austin Pendleton, and here she goes from Gene Wilder to Peter Boyle as the monster.
I know. It's such a funny twist, and she was, everybody kind of understood and appreciated that she was extremely talented. I'm surprised that she didn't have an even bigger career, and of course, it was sad that she was claimed by cancer.
Yeah.
while she was still young, or relatively young, and but she was extremely talented. In fact, the whole cast was done very well, and they were top notch.
Oh yeah, Marty Feldman and God, so many great people in there. Gene Hackman, as the blind man. Oh, that is so hilarious. You must have been the tallest one in your class.
No. At the time, they were talking about how they were pleased that Gene would do such a small role, which I think was done in one day.
Yeah.
And Gene made a comment that said, "Well, he's so secure in his stardom that he's not threatened by doing a small, cameo." And that's true. Gene also is an extraordinarily talented actor, and went on to do really great things. But really a very fine actor. And although he's gotten all kinds of recognition, he deserves even more. He's a great actor.
Yeah, and he was, and especially at that time, he was so underappreciated in doing comedy, and he is just hilarious.
Hilarious, yeah, absolutely.
You're one of three people that are still left alive. It's you, Mel, and Terry Garr. But up until 2 years ago, Danny Goldman was still alive, who played the antagonizing student at the beginning of the movie.
I didn't realize that he had passed.
Yeah, right when COVID started, he had passed. And I had reached out to him in 2019 for the 45th anniversary of the movie, but I never heard back from him, unfortunately. Around that time, he did an interview on another show, and he was just so funny and so articulate. He and I could have had a great conversation, but it wasn't meant to be, unfortunately.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that he's passed on.
Yeah.
But he was, he did very well with that role. He did that, just so perfectly well, that kind of smarmy, kind of annoying student.
Absolutely. He came from improv and all of that stuff. Then you worked with Gene again on The World's Greatest Lover. How did that come about for you?
Well, Gene was also very good to me and, gave me opportunities in other films, and he had a 3-picture deal with 20th, and he took his time about it. But World's Greatest Lover was the first of that 3-picture deal, and so he wrote the script and he starred in it and he also directed, and it was so much fun to do. And Dom DeLuise was in that film.
Yep.
Although he got a lot of recognition in his career, he deserved even more because he was so genuinely funny. He had us all in stitches. I mean, it was hard to keep a straight face and not break out laughing while they were shooting, because he would come up with new things. And there was one point where Dom had done some kind of improvisation as the film producer Adolf Zitz, and I was just cracking up. It was so funny, but Gene didn't use it, and later I asked him, and apparently, although it was funny to us, it wasn't really what the character would do, or at least in kind of Gene's view. And so he kind of limited things, but and he also said when I asked, he says, "Well, I know how funny Dom can be, and I know how to bring out the best in him." And Dom was really good in that role, and I enjoyed working with him. He was also very friendly, and he was a great guy to work with.
Yeah, I mean, he got to have the best of both worlds, working with Mel and Gene, and then working with Burt Reynolds at the same time. I mean, he had a pretty good career.
Absolutely. He did very well. But he could have gotten more recognition than he did, because he was good at improvisation. He was a good actor. I mean, he was well-rounded in his background. And I think there was a black and white film from the 50s that he had a role in. Oh, it was called Failsafe. He had a small role, and he was brilliant in it.
Oh yeah, I mean when he did the movie Fatso, I mean I think he was so great in that he could have gotten an Oscar nomination. He was like Ernest Borgnine and Marty in that movie.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, he was very talented, and I was very pleased to work with such talented people.
I think that The World's Greatest Lover is Gene's most underrated comedy because, like Young Frankenstein, it's a love letter to old Hollywood, and this movie is so full of great slapstick and pathos, which is missing from today's movies.
Yeah, Gene had a knack of being able to ride the fence between drama and comedy, and maybe it was because of his background, because he was a classically trained stage actor.
Mm-hmm.
Who had studied in London, I think at Lambda. And during one part, one day filming World's Greatest Lover, in between takes, he did a Shakespearean monologue.
Mm-hmm.
It was brilliant. I mean, he was really a very fine actor and a very bright person. Very sensitive soul.
Yeah, that's what I heard about him. He was a very sensitive guy. Yeah, I've talked to a few people from The World's Greatest Lover: Muse Small, Candace Azara, Peter Elbling, Deborah DeLizzo, who was a dancer, and yeah, they all said that he was a sensitive guy and they had great experiences working with him.
Yeah.
You worked with Gene again on Sunday Lovers. I'd never seen that. What do you remember about that?
Well, I did well in the things that I did, but this was one where I didn't do very well. And for some reason, I got very nervous, and when it came time for the close-up, I just kind of I didn't give him what he was looking for, and I wound up being cut out of the film.
Oh.
But it was well-deserved. I mean, I just didn't do as well as I wanted, and he was looking for something else, and that he directed that also. He wound up going another way, and I was cut out. But I don't mind. It was a good project anyway, and it was a learning experience. And again, he was very kind. He was probably a little disappointed that day, but everything worked out.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, Kathleen Quinlan's in it. She's such an underrated actress. She worked with Gene again on Hinky Panky, which was the next movie.
Yeah, that was a funny film too.
Yeah, and the first one he did with Gilda.
Yeah, no, that was a great era, and he was on a roll.
You had a role in the TV movie The Blue Hotel. Any memories of that?
That was directed by Jan Kadar, who had won an Oscar for a foreign film, I think in a Czech film, called The Shop on Main Street. And, I've been confused with the actual film production. The production that I was in, with directed by Jan Kadar, was at AFI.
Mm-hmm.
And this was when they were at the Greystone Mansion in the Hollywood Hills,
Mm-hmm.
I guess Bel Air. And they were there for years and years, and they would use the house for sets and things. But I remember what a kind person he was, and he also was very sensitive, very bright. And unfortunately, he died a few years later from cancer, and it was such a disappointment because he was a very talented director, extremely gracious to me, and kind and everything, and just had he had a great future. He did do a film with Muhammad Ali,
Mm-hmm.
and he was pleased for that. He was very fond of Muhammad, and. Yeah, he was just a great guy. I'm sorry that he passed way before his time.
Ah, that is unfortunate. Speaking of passing, David Warner was in that, and he just died this summer.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. He was great at playing mad scientists, that guy.
well, like I say, there's the film that's out that I'm not in. I'm in a recreated production for AFIV, American Film Institute, and it was a learning experience. There were a lot of good people that worked on that. We had a great time. But as far as I know, that particular production never went through a final edit. But the film that you're referring to with the people that you just mentioned, that was another production. That was the commercial production.
Right. We all know how inaccurate IMDb can be, but is there anything that they left out that you could mention that you were in?
Oh, is there anything that they left out? I was in a television episode of film with Lloyd Bridges, named Joe Forrester, and that was it was a difficult role, and I did okay, but the film, the series was short-lived. I think it only lasted either a half season or one season, or something. Wasn't picked up.
Joe Forrester.
I appeared in a lot of talk shows at the time. In the 70s, there was a talk show called The Mike Douglas Show in Philadelphia, and I was a guest on that, and I did fairly well in the 70s, but then in the 80s I got I was married young, and I was raising a family, and in the 80s, the family was growing family, and had 2 children, and realized that rent comes every month. You have to take care of people. So I had an opportunity to go into business, and I did that, and I did very well. And so that was like kind of the middle part of my working career. And then I did that up until the 90s, and did well. As I say, I had a small chain of furniture stores, and then I was elected to a governing position in the Baha'i Faith at the local level here in LA, and I started working full time in the mid 90s, and up until this day, I'm still in service for the Baha'i Faith. I serve on the Regional Baha'i Council for the state of California, and that's what I do most of the time now. Acting, I enjoy it. I had a great time while I was doing it. The only acting I did after I kind of turned to business was I had the opportunity to act in different parts of the world for the Baha'i Faith, and I've done that, and I've enjoyed that experience as well, different parts of the world, and turned out well.
You consider yourself a journalist and an activist in politics?
I do, and even to this day, I should probably mention, that I work in external affairs for the Baha'i Faith locally. That's my service, and I work with a lot of people that are movers and shakers. Right now there is an election who's going to be the new mayor of LA. Right. And Karen Bass is someone that I know and have worked with in the past. And I don't know Rick Caruso. Yeah. Although I know people that know him, and I watched the debate that they had recently between Karen Bass and Caruso, and he came off well. But Karen is someone that I have known for a long time, since she was a member of the State Assembly for the state of California. She was Speaker of the Assembly, and then went on to Congress several terms. And so the opening because Eric Garcetti is terming out as mayor, he can't run again. And he's been appointed as the ambassador to India by Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And although it hasn't been confirmed yet by the Senate, Karen saw the opportunity to serve as mayor and thought she would turn to that. And I mean, I can't speak for Caruso because I don't know him,
Mm-hmm.
but I do know Karen Bass, and I do know that she would make a good mayor.
I had one of Rick Caruso's campaigners on here to talk about his legendary movie star's grandfather on here, and he gave a plug to Rick Caruso. I didn't even know that the guy had been a conservative previously, and now he's a liberal. And I see all these people on Twitter, saying, he's a former conservative, you can't trust him, and all of this stuff. And I'm like,
Well,
yeah,
it's a crazy world that we live in, and
yeah,
and it's also right now, as I'm sure you're aware, the world is so terribly polarized,
oh yeah,
and issues are complicated, and it's not normally like a conservative or a liberal. Those are just terms
right,
that really don't define people very well, because you might be liberal on something, but conservative in something else. So people are usually a mixture of both things. And frankly, we're overly partisan.
right,
And, in the Baha'i faith, we talk about voting, everybody's free to vote for the person that they want, of course. But we're encouraged to vote for the best person for the job, and
right.
not by party, because by party it is divisive. You're taking sides.
Right.
And in the Baha'i faith, that's something that we don't do. We're extremely neutral, and we don't take sides. And so whoever is mayor is going to have a big job on their hands, and there's a lot of troubling social issues to have to deal with. The homeless, affordable housing, racism. The city is, doing what it can and has certainly been trying its best to overcome a lot of these problems. But they're difficult issues. It's just not easy. If it were easy, it would have been done a long time ago.
Right.
And the fact that these issues have been with us for so long and do not look like they're going to be easily solved in the near future is a testament to just how difficult they are.
Right. I totally agree. One last thing I wanted to bring up that's show business related. In 1994, you wrote a play called Prisoners of the Heart, which had a run in San Francisco and L.A. What's the genesis behind that?
Okay, so Prisoners of the Heart is a play that I actually wrote.
Yeah.
And I had a tremendous time doing it. It was related to the Baha'i faith in the sense that it was about these women prisoners in Iran. They had been arrested for teaching Baha'i children's classes in a Muslim country, in a Muslim majority country. And as you know, Iran is run by a Shiite Islamic government that is extremist in its views. And right now, of course, Iranian women are fighting for their rights, not to have to wear the shawl, the hijab, the Muslim wear that devout followers wear, but they're fighting for their freedom, that they have a right to wear what they want, and they certainly do not deserve to be arrested by the morality police and up in public squares. So that issue is ongoing, and Prisoners of the Heart was about religious freedom, and these 10 women who were actual people, and one by one they were hung in a public place, in a soccer stadium actually, outside of Shiraz on June 18th, 1983. And any of them could have saved their lives by renouncing their membership in the Baha'i faith. But they refused to do so, and they paid for that with their lives.
Wow. So it was a pet.
That's why they were prisoners of the heart, is because their love for their religion was the ultimate reason why they were killed.
Wow. And this was a pet project for you. It was like a labor of love.
Exactly. Yeah, and we did it at the San Francisco Baha'i Center, which has since moved, but this was back in the early '90s. And we went on tour in California, and it was a great experience. Worked with great people. The director of the project was a man who also has since passed on. His name was Park McAllister, who taught drama for many years here in the Valley at a high school. And he was just a great guy and really bright and extremely talented.
How long did the play run for?
It ran for about 6 months in various venues.
That's good. Was it like a 2 or 3 person play, or was it a huge cast?
No, that was one of the difficulties. It had a large cast, and there were prison guards, and there were prisoners, and I did play a role in it, and it was a large cast, and it was not easy to do. We tried to keep a simple set with just like because it needed to be something that was portable, that you could like do a bus and truck tour, and the set was basically a cell door out of iron, so it would make that noise clang when it was closed, and the locking mechanism would make a noise, and the kind of creaking sound when it would open. So it was kind of it was a set piece, but it was kind of a member of the cast at the same time.
Nice. Well, Randolph, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing these great stories about old show business there, and I'm glad you're doing what you love, and it's a story with a happy ending.
Yes, it is, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
My pleasure. I actually have a friend who has a podcast that may want to talk with you. He's a huge young Frankenstein fan as well. I can connect you two.
Okay, great.
Well, you have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You have a great day and be safe out there.
And you as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Randolph Dobbs. Ain't he a cool dude? Oh, what a nice man. It was a great conversation, and I'm glad we got to talk today. And I'm glad he's putting his passions out there in politics and the humane side of life. That was just very uplifting to talk with him there in the middle about, what his passions are and stuff. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.